You think you understand freezing. You've seen ice your entire life. You put it in your drinks. You've slipped on it in winter. You've watched frost crawl across your windshield. Freezing is ordinary, mundane, music, boring even. So you must understand it, right? Okay, explain it to me. What actually happens when water turns to ice? Not what you call it. Not it gets cold or it solidifies. What happens at the level of atoms, molecules, the actual stuff that water is made of? What changes? Most people go blank. They say something vague. The molecules slow down, the water gets hard, it changes state. But those aren't explanations. Those are just different words for the same mystery. You're describing what you observe, not what's happening underneath. Here's what bothers me. You've interacted with ice thousands of times. You've made ice. You've melted ice. You've watched condensation freeze on cold glass. And yet if I asked you to tell me, really tell me, why water becomes solid at 0 degrees Celsius, you couldn't do it. You'd guess. Music. You'd wave your hands. You'd repeat something half-remembered from school about molecules slowing down, and you'd have no idea if you were right. That should disturb you. You live on a planet where water, freezing and melting drives the weather, shapes the geology, makes life possible. Ice ages, ocean currents, the water cycle, clouds, rain, snow, all of it depends on this one transition, liquid to solid, solid to liquid. And you don't actually know why it happens. The truth is, freezing is one of the strangest things in the universe. Not because it's complicated, but because it reveals something deep about how matter organizes itself. Something that breaks your everyday intuition about what solid and liquid even mean. And once you see what's really going on, and once you understand what happens at the molecular level, when water freezes, you'll never look at an ice cube the same way again. But before we go any further, I need you to understand something about the question you're asking. When you ask, why does water freeze? What do you actually want? Think about it. You want me to compare freezing to something else, something you already understand. You want me to say water freezes because of X, where X is some familiar thing like dominoes falling or balls slowing down or whatever, fits neatly into your existing mental model. But here's the problem. Freezing is the familiar thing. You've known about ice since before you could walk. It's one of the most basic experiences of being human. So when you ask me to explain it by comparing it to something more familiar, you're asking for something that doesn't exist. There's nothing more familiar than freezing. What you really want, and this is important, is for me to explain freezing in terms of something simpler. You want me to reduce it to components you can visualize, and that I can do. But I need to warn you, the deeper we go, the stranger it gets, because freezing isn't just about temperature dropping. It's not just things slow down and get hard. It's about a fundamental reorganization of matter. It's about chaos turning into order. It's about molecules that were tumbling randomly, suddenly locking into precise geometric arrangements like soldiers snapping to attention. And the forces driving this, the actual physics underneath, are the same forces that hold your body together, that make chemistry possible, that allow atoms to exist at all. You're not asking a simple question. You're asking about one of the 4 fundamental forces of the universe expressing itself in your freezer. So let's stop pretending this is ordinary. Let's stop acting like freezing is something you learned in 3rd grade and now fully understand. You don't. Nobody explained it to you properly. They gave you the cartoon version. Molecules slow down. Water becomes ice. End of story. The real story is so much stranger and so much more beautiful. Now let's talk about temperature, because everything you think you know about it is wrong. You think temperature is a thing, a property, something that water has like color or weight. You look at a thermometer and see a number, 20 degrees, 50 degrees, 100 degrees, and you think that number represents something real, something fundamental about the substance you're measuring. It doesn't. Temperature is not a thing. Temperature is motion. That's it. When you measure temperature, you're measuring how fast molecules are moving, how violently they're vibrating, spinning, crashing into each other. A thermometer doesn't detect some magical property called heat. It detects collisions. Molecules slam into the thermometer, transfer their kinetic energy, and the thermometer translates that into a number you can read. That number is an average of chaos. Right now, the water in a glass on your desk, if it's at room temperature, contains molecules moving at wildly different speeds. Some are practically crawling. Others are screaming along at hundreds of meters per second. Temperature is just the average kinetic energy of all that molecular madness, nothing more. So when you cool water down, you're not adding coldness. Cold isn't a substance. You're removing energy. You're slowing the molecules down. Each molecule has less kinetic energy, moves slower, vibrates less violently. The average drops, the thermometer reads a lower number. That's all cooling is theft. You're stealing motion from molecules. And here's what that means for freezing. When water approaches 0 degrees Celsius, the molecules are moving slowly, really slowly. They still have some kinetic energy. They're not stopped, but they've lost most of their speed. They're no longer careening around like bumper cars at a carnival. They're drifting, sluggish. And that slowness changes everything, because when molecules move slowly, other forces start to matter. Forces that were always there but couldn't get a grip when everything was moving too fast. Forces that have been waiting patiently for the chaos to calm down. Forces that will grab those water molecules and lock them into place. But to understand those forces, you first need to understand what water actually is. And I promise you, it's stranger than you think. Water, H2O, 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen. You learned this in elementary school. It sounds simple. It's not. Let's look at what that formula actually means. You have an oxygen atom at the center. Oxygen has 8 electrons. It wants 10, or rather it wants 8 in its outer shell to be stable. It's greedy. It needs 2 more electrons to complete its outer shell. Now you have 2 hydrogen atoms. Each hydrogen has 1 electron. Each hydrogen would be more stable with 2. Music. So they make a deal. Oxygen shares electrons with both hydrogens. Each hydrogen shares its electron with oxygen. Covalent bonds form. Everyone gets closer to having a full outer shell. Stable, happy, done. Except it's not done. Because oxygen doesn't just share those electrons. Oxygen hoards them. Oxygen is more electrogative than hydrogen. It pulls electrons toward itself with more force. So even though the electrons are technically shared, they spend more time near the oxygen than near the hydrogens. This creates a problem, or rather it creates something remarkable. The oxygen end of the molecule becomes slightly negative. It has more electron density. The hydrogen ends become slightly positive. They've had their electrons pulled away. The water molecule is lopsided, unbalanced. It has a positive side and a negative side. It's polar. You know what else is polar? A magnet. North and south, positive and negative. And just like magnets, these polar ends of water molecules can interact with each other. The positive hydrogen of one molecule gets attracted to the negative oxygen of another molecule. Not as strongly as a covalent bond. This is weaker, subtler, but it's there, always there. And it changes everything about how water behaves. This attraction has a name. It's called a hydrogen bond. And hydrogen bonds are the key to understanding why water freezes the way music does. So water molecules are polar, positive end, negative end. And here's where it gets interesting. Opposite charges attract. You know this from magnets, from static electricity, from rubbing a balloon on your hair. Positive pulls toward negative. It's one of the most fundamental behaviors in the universe. So what happens when you have billions of water molecules floating around? Each one with a positive end and a negative end. They reach for each other. The positive hydrogen of one molecule stretches toward the negative oxygen of another, not touching, not merging, not forming a covalent bond. This is something different, something weaker, but something absolutely crucial. This attraction is called a hydrogen bond. Music. And I need you to understand, hydrogen bonds are not like the bonds holding the water molecule together internally. Those covalent bonds are strong. It takes serious energy to break them. Hydrogen bonds are roughly 20 times weaker. They form easily. They break easily. They're delicate. But here's the thing about delicate forces acting in enormous numbers. They add up. In a single drop of water, there are roughly 1.5 sextillion molecules. That's a 1 followed by 21 zeros. And every single one of those molecules is reaching toward its neighbors, forming hydrogen bonds, breaking them, forming new ones. Trillions of tiny handshakes every second. An invisible web of attraction permeating the entire liquid. You can't see it. You can't feel it directly, but it's there. It's always there. and it's responsible for almost everything strange about water. Why water has such a high boiling point compared to similar molecules. Why water has high surface tension. Why ice floats. Why life exists. All of it comes back to this secret attraction. This constant, restless, endless reaching of positive toward negative, hydrogen toward oxygen, molecule toward molecule. Now picture liquid water at room temperature. What's happening at the molecular level? Chaos. Pure, beautiful chaos. The molecules are moving fast. They have kinetic energy. They're vibrating, rotating, slamming into each other, bouncing apart. And yes, hydrogen bonds are forming constantly. A hydrogen on one molecule drifts close to an oxygen on another molecule. Attraction kicks in. A hydrogen bond forms, but the molecules don't stop moving. They're still vibrating, still getting jostled by their neighbors, still carrying kinetic energy from the heat in the environment. So that hydrogen bond you just formed, it lasts for maybe a picosecond, a trillionth of a second. Then the molecules have enough energy to rip apart, tumble away, find new partners, form new bonds, break those two. It's a dance, a furious, frantic, constantly changing dance. No molecule stays bonded to the same neighbor for long. No structure persists. Everything is in flux. If you could somehow freeze time and look at liquid water at the molecular level, you'd see a tangled mess, molecules pointing in random directions. Some forming brief hydrogen bonds, others flying free. No pattern, no order, just motion and chaos and energy. This is what liquid means. Not wet or flows or any of the macroscopic properties you experience. Liquid means the molecules have enough energy to break whatever bonds try to hold them in place. They're too fast, too energetic, too chaotic to lock into any structure. The hydrogen bonds are trying. They're always trying. Every molecule wants to grab its neighbors and hold on. But the thermal energy keeps ripping them apart. It's a war between attraction and motion. And in liquid water, motion is winning. But what happens when you start removing that energy? What happens when the molecules slow down? Now start removing heat. Music. Put that water in your freezer. What happens? The molecules slow down. Remember, temperature is just motion. Lower the temperature, you lower the motion. The molecules that were screaming around at hundreds of meters per second start to calm down. They're still moving, still colliding, still forming hydrogen bonds, but now something is different. They don't have enough energy to break free as easily. A hydrogen bond forms between two molecules. In warm water, that bond would last a picosecond before kinetic energy ripped it apart. But now the molecules are moving slower. They don't have the same violent energy. That bond lasts a little longer, then a little longer still. And while that bond holds, other molecules drift close. They form their own hydrogen bonds to the same pair. Now you have 3 molecules linked together, then 4, then 10. The bonds are still breaking. This isn't ice yet, but they're lasting long enough for something remarkable to start happening. Structure begins to emerge. Brief flickers of organization in the chaos. Little clusters of molecules holding together for a few nancons before thermal motion tears them apart. But as the temperature drops further, those clusters grow larger. They last longer. The balance is shifting. In liquid water, motion was winning the war against attraction. Now attraction is gaining ground. The hydrogen bonds are getting a grip. The chaos is starting to lose. You're watching order fight its way into existence, one bond at a time. The molecules are still dancing, but the dance is slowing down. Partners are holding on longer. The frenzy is becoming a waltz. And then at a very specific temperature, something extraordinary happens. 0 degrees Celsius, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 273.15 Kelvin. This number isn't arbitrary. It's not something humans made up. It's a knife edge in the physics of water. And when you cross it, everything changes. At exactly this temperature, the kinetic energy of water molecules drops below a critical threshold. The hydrogen bonds stop breaking, or rather, they stop breaking faster than they form. Music. For the first time, the bonds can hold permanently. But here's what should blow your mind. The molecules don't just freeze in random positions, locked wherever they happen to be. They organize, They arrange themselves into precise geometric patterns. Each water molecule forms hydrogen bonds with exactly 4 neighbors. Not 3, not 5, 4. And those 4 neighbors arrange themselves around the central molecule in a perfect tetrahedron, a 3-dimensional shape with 4 corners, like a pyramid with a triangular base. Why 4? Because of geometry. Each water molecule has 2 hydrogens that can donate to hydrogen bonds. And the oxygen has 2 lone pairs of electrons that can accept hydrogen bonds. Music, 2 plus 2 equals 4. The shape of the molecule dictates the shape of the crystal. This is inevitable given the structure of water molecules and the nature of hydrogen bonds. This tetrahedral arrangement is the lowest energy configuration. It's not random. It's not chance. It's physics finding the most stable state. And when trillions of molecules all lock into this pattern simultaneously, you get ice order emerging from chaos, structure crystallizing out of randomness, a liquid becoming a solid, not through compression, not through molecules getting closer together, but through molecules finding their positions in a vast repeating geometric lattice. That's what freezing actually is. Now here's something that should completely break your brain. When most substances freeze, they contract. This makes intuitive sense. The molecules slow down, stop crashing around, settle into place. They pack tighter. Solid is denser than liquid. Metal, rock,
There are
wax,
always new atoms,
alcohol.
but always doing the
Freeze
same
any
dance,
of them,
remembering what the
shrink.
dance was
The
yesterday.
solid, this is what
Sinks
you
in
are.
the liquid.
Not
That's
a collection
normal.
of stuff.
That's what you'd expect.
A pattern.
Water
a
does the
configuration.
opposite.
A
When
way
water
that matter
freezes,
has
it
organized
expands.
itself
The solid
temporarily,
is less dense than the liquid.
into something
Ice
that
floats.
can look up
You've
at the
seen this
stars
1,000
and
times
wonder.
and never stopped
Now,
to think
I want
about
to
how
pause here and
absolutely
explain
insane it
this
is.
as simply
Think
as I
about what
can,
this
because
means.
this is the key
The
idea.
molecules in ice
Imagine
are
a
farther
wave
apart
in the
than
ocean.
the molecules in
You
liquid
see it
water.
rolling toward the
The
shore.
rigid lock,
You might
crystalline
think,
structure
there goes
takes
that
up
water
more
moving
space
across
than the chaotic
sea.
tumbling liquid.
But that's not what's
How
happening
is that
at all.
possible?
The water isn't
It's the
traveling.
tetrahedral geometry.
Each little bit of water
in liquid
just moves
water,
up and down
molecules
in
are
place.
constantly
What travels
moving,
is the
constantly
shape,
rearranging.
the pattern.
They can
The
pack
wave is not a
relatively
thing.
close
It's the
together
behavior that
because they're not
matter is
locked into
doing.
any particular
You
configuration.
are like that
They
wave. The
slide
atoms
past
are like
each
the
other,
water.
filling
They
gaps.
come in,
arrange
they move
themselves
around,
efficiently
they
through
leave.
pure chaos.
But the pattern,
when
when
ice
ice
forms,
forms,
every
the way
molecule
you talk,
must
the way
bond
you
to
think,
exactly
the way
4
you
neighbors
laugh,
at specific
that keeps
angles.
going for a
the
while.
tetrahedral structure
Now let
is
me
rigid.
come to the
It
misconception.
can't flex or compress.
The big one,
and it
the
contains
one that
holes,
most people carry
empty
around without
spaces
even
and
knowing
lattice
it.
where no molecules
Most people
sit.
think that when
The
you
structure
die,
is
something
beautiful,
is destroyed.
but it's not
They
space
think that
efficient.
the matter,
the result,
the energy,
ice
the
is
stuff
about
you're made of, it
9%
just
less
vanishes.
dense than liquid
Poof.
water.
Gone.
That's why your ice
And this
cubes
is completely
float.
wrong.
That's
Nothing
why
is
pipes
destroyed
burst
when
when
they
they
freeze.
freeze. Not one
The
atom,
expanding
not
ice
one
has
calorie
nowhere to
of
go.
energy.
And here's
When
why
a
this
person
matters
dies,
more than
the
you could
atoms that
possibly
made up
imagine.
their body
Lakes
return to
freeze
the earth
from the top
they
down.
get taken up by
The ice
grass,
floats
by
on the
trees,
surface,
by worms,
forming an
by
insulating
bacteria.
layer that
They
protects
enter
the
the liquid
soil.
water,
They
dissolve into water.
Fish survive
they float
the
into
winter.
the air,
Ecosystems
and those atoms
persist.
go on to
If
become
ice sank
parts
like
of
every
other
other
living
frozen
things,
substance,
other structures,
lakes
other
would freeze
patterns.
solid from the bottom
energy
up.
is the
Life in
same
fresh
way.
water would be
Every
nearly
bit
impossible.
of chemical
The
energy
bizarre
stored in your
expansion
muscles,
of water
your fat, your
is one of the
tissues, it
reasons
gets
you
released.
exist.
You want to know why water
It
forms
becomes
this
the energy
particular
of decomposition.
Why
It feeds
tetrahedral?
other organisms.
Why these
It
angles?
enters the great
why this
cycling of
specific
energy that has
arrangement
been going
and
on
not
since the
something
universe
else?
began.
It's not arbitrary.
From the point of view of
Music,
physics, death
it's
is not
one
destruction.
possibility
It
among
is
many.
reorganization.
It's inevitable.
It's the end of
Start
one
with the
pattern
water molecule
and the dispersal
itself.
of the
The
components
oxygen
to make
atom
new
sits
pattern.
at the center
That is
with
all
two
it is.
hydrogen atoms
Now, some of
bonded
you
to
might
it.
say, well,
But
Feynman,
those
that's all
hydrogens
very
aren't
clever,
on
but the
opposite
pattern
sides of the
is
oxygen
the part
making
I
a
care
straight
about.
line.
I don't care that
They're
my
at an
atoms
angle.
survive.
Specifically,
I care that I survive.
104.5 degrees.
And I understand that.
Why that
I
angle?
do.
Quantum
I am not going to
mechanics.
stand here and
The
tell you
oxygen
that
has
physics
4 pairs of
removes the
electrons
sting
in
of
its
death.
outer
It doesn't.
shell. Two
The loss
bonding
of a
pairs
pattern,
shared with
the
hydrogen,
loss of a person
two
that
lone
is real.
pairs belonging
That
only
is
to
as
the
real
oxygen.
as anything in the
These
universe.
electron pairs
But I want you to
repel
hold
each
two
other.
ideas
They
in
wanna
your
get
mind
as
at
far
once.
apart as
The
possible.
first idea
If you have
is that the
4
pattern,
things on a
the
sphere
person is
trying to
temporary.
maximize
It
their
emerges,
distance
it
from each
dances,
other,
and
they
it
arrange
dissolves.
themselves
That
into a
is the nature of
tetrahedron.
every complex
That's just
structure in the
geometry.
universe.
But
From
the lone
stars to
pairs
snowflakes
repel
to
slightly more
civilizations.
than the bonding
The
pairs.
second
So they
idea
push the
is that the
hydrogens a
components
little
are
closer
not
together.
temporary.
The perfect
atoms are
tetrahedral
older
angle
than
would
the
be
mountains,
109.5
older than the earth,
degrees.
older than the sun.
The actual angle in
They
water
were
is
forged in
104.5
stars that
degrees.
exploded before
Close
our
but
solar
compressed
system was a
by those
cloud of
pushy
dust.
lone pairs.
And after you're gone,
Now, when
those
water
atoms
freezes
will go
and
on.
hydrogen
They
bonds
will be
become
part of the
permanent,
soil, the
each
rain, the
molecule
air, and eventually
bonds to
other
4
living
neighbors.
things. Two
Perhaps
bonds
other
through its
beings who will
hydrogens,
sit and
two
wonder about
bonds
their
through
own
its
existence,
oxygens, lone
just
pairs,
as you are doing right
four
now.
bonds
Let me
arranged
try a thought
tetrahedrally.
experiment. Let's
The angle
follow
of the
a single
molecule
carbon
dictates
atom.
the angle
This
of the
carbon
crystal.
atom was made
The crystal
inside a
structure
massive
of ice
star,
isn't designed.
let's say 10 times the
Music,
mass of our
it's not
sun,
chosen.
about 5
It's the
billion
only
years ago.
possible outcome
The star
given the
exploded.
quantum mechanical
The atom
properties
drifted through
of
space.
oxygen
It
and
got
hydrogen
caught up in
atoms.
the cloud of gas
Change
and
those
dust
properties
that
and you
eventually
change the
collapsed to
structure.
form our solar
But you
system.
can't change
It ended
those
up on
properties.
Earth,
They're
buried in
fundamental.
limestone for a
So
few
ice
hundred
has
million
to be
years.
ice.
Then, a
Given the
volcanic
rules of
eruption
the universe,
released it as
water
carbon
has no
dioxide.
choice but to
A
freeze
plant absorbed
exactly
it
the
during
way it does.
photosynthesis.
Here's
A
something
rabbit
most
ate the
people
plant.
never consider.
The rabbit
That
died
when
and
water freezes,
decomposed,
it releases
releasing
energy.
the atom back
Read that
to the
again.
soil.
Freezing
A
releases
tree
heat.
absorbed
That seems
it.
backwards, doesn't
The
it?
tree was
You
cut
put
down and
water
burned.
in a
The
freezer
atom
to
went
make
back
it
into
cold.
the atmosphere.
You remove heat
Another
to make
plant
ice.
grabbed it.
So
A
how
cow
can
ate that
freezing
plant.
release energy?
You ate the cow.
Think about
And
what's
now that
happening at the
carbon atom is
molecular
sitting
level.
in a cell in your
In
left
liquid
hand.
water,
When you
molecules
die,
are
that
moving
atom will
fast,
leave your body,
breaking
It will enter the
hydrogen bonds
soil.
as quickly
It will
as
be
they
absorbed
form.
by a blade of
Those
grass.
molecules have
A sheep
kinetic
will eat
energy,
the grass.
energy
A
of
child
motion.
will drink the sheep's
but
milk.
they also have
And the atom that
potential
was
energy.
once in a star, once in a
Energy
limestone,
stored in their
once in
positions
a rabbit,
relative
once
to
in
each
you,
other. When
will
a
be part of
hydrogen
child
bond
who has
forms,
no idea where
energy
it came
is
from.
released.
That atom has done
The
this
molecules
dance
move to a
10,000
lower
times.
energy state.
It doesn't know
It's
and
like
it doesn't
a ball
care,
rolling
but
downhill.
It keeps going.
The ball at the top
Now
of the
here's
hill
the
has
part that gives
potential
me a
energy.
real thrill when I think about
When
it.
it rolls down,
the first
that law
potential
of
energy
thermodynamics
converts to
tells
kinetic
us
energy,
that energy
then to
is
heat when it
conserved.
hits the bottom.
It cannot
Hydrogen
be created
bonds
or
work
destroyed.
the same way.
And there
When
is a
two
related
molecules
fact about
lock
matter
together,
courtesy
the
of
bond
nuclear
releases
physics.
energy.
And the
In liquid
understanding
water,
we
this
gained
doesn't
in
matter
this
much
century.
because the bonds
Under
keep
ordinary
breaking.
conditions, atoms
Energy
are not
released,
created or
energy
destroyed
absorbed.
either.
It
They
all
are
balances
rearranged.
out into chaos.
The number of carbon
But when
atoms
water
on Earth
freezes,
has been roughly the
trillions
same
of
for
hydrogen
billions
bonds
of years.
form
They just
permanently
keep
all at
cycling
once.
through
Every
rocks,
single bond
through
releases a
air,
little packet
through
of energy.
water, through
All
living
those
things.
packets add up
so
to
in a
something
very
significant.
deep and literal
About
sense,
334
nothing
joules
that
per
you
gram of water.
are made of
That's a
will
lot.
ever be
It's called
lost.
the latent
It will
heat of
change
fusion.
form.
And it's why
it will be
ice in your drink
rearranged.
keeps the drink
it
cold
will become something
for so
else,
long.
but it will
The
not
ice
cease
can't
to
warm
exist
up until all of it has
I should
melted.
be careful and say something
and
here
melting
about the
requires
second law of
pumping all that
thermodynamics
energy
because
back
people
in.
sometimes get
This
confused.
is why freezing is more than just
second
slowing
law
down.
says that the
It's a
entropy of a
fundamental
closed system tends to
reorganization.
increase.
Molecules
In plain
falling into
language,
lower
that
energy
means things
states,
tend to go
structure
from ordered to
crystallizing,
disordered.
energy dumping out
A
into the
sand
environment.
castle falls
Your
apart.
freezer has to
A
work
hot
hard
cup
to
of
remove
coffee
all
cools
that
down.
released heat,
A
pumping
living
it out
body
into your
decays.
kitchen just so the water
This is
can
real
finish
and it's
becoming ice.
important.
The
Why does
second
water
law is the
freeze
reason
at
that 0
complex
degrees
patterns
Celsius,
like you and me
not
don't
at
last
10 degrees
forever?
Celsius,
It takes
not at
energy
minus
to
20
maintain
degrees
the pattern,
Celsius
to keep
the
the
dance
dance going
going
to
zero.
fight the natural
What's special about
tendency
that
toward
number?
disorder.
When
This
you
is
die,
where we hit
that
bedrock.
fight stops and
The
entropy
freezing
wins.
point isn't
the pattern
arbitrary.
dissolves.
It's not
But
something
notice
water
what the
decided.
second law does
It's
not
a balance
say.
point.
It does not say that
two
matter or
competing
energy
forces
is
are exactly
destroyed.
equal.
It says that
On one
organization
side,
is lost.
you have kinetic energy,
The stuff is still
molecular
there.
motion,
It's just
chaos,
reshuffled into a
the
less
force that
organized
breaks
arrangement.
hydrogen bonds
The
and
atoms of a
keeps water
decomposed
liquid.
body
On the other
are still
side,
atoms.
you have
the energy
hydrogen
of a
bonds.
cooled down fire is
Attraction
still
order,
energy.
the
It's
force
just
that wants
spread
to
out,
lock molecules
diluted,
into
harder to
crystal
use
structure.
for anything useful.
At temperatures
And here is
above
one more
0
thing I want you to
degrees
think about,
Celsius,
because I think it's the
kinetic
most
energy
astonishing
wins.
fact in all of science.
Molecules are moving too fast.
The universe
for
is
hydrogen
about
bonds to
14
hold.
billion years old.
Any structure
Give
that
or
tries to
take.
form gets
For most
immediately
of that
ripped
time,
apart
there was
by
no
thermal
one
motion.
around to look at.
Water stays liquid.
No eyes, no
At
brains,
temperatures
no
below 0
thoughts.
degrees
Just
Celsius,
hydrogen and
hydrogen
helium
bonds
collapsing
win.
into stars,
Molecules are moving too
exploding,
slowly to
making
escape.
heavier atoms,
The bonds
collapsing
form
again
and hold.
for billions and
Structure
billions of
propagates.
years. The universe was
Ice
just
grows
matter doing what
at
matter
exactly
does
0
blindly,
degrees
stupidly.
Celsius.
Neither
Each
side
atom
wins.
minding its
the energy
own
of molecular
business.
motion precisely
And then
equals
somewhere
the
on a
energy of
small
hydrogen
rocky
bond
planet
formation.
orbiting an ordinary
Molecules are
star
slow
in an
enough
ordinary
that bonds
galaxy,
can form.
some
But
of those
fast enough
atoms
that they
arrange
can still
themselves
break.
into a
You get
pattern
a
that
dynamic
could think,
equilibrium
that could
Ice
wonder,
and water
that could look up
coexisting.
at the night
Neither
sky
gaining
and ask,
ground.
what
This
is all
temperature
this?
isn't designed.
Why is there something
it emerges.
instead of nothing?
It falls directly
You are
out
the
of universe
of
looking at
oxygen atoms,
itself.
the mass of
You
hydrogen
are
atoms,
atoms
the
that have
strength of
arranged
covalent
themselves
bonds,
into a
the strength
configuration
of hydrogen
so
bonds,
complex,
the geometry
so
of electron
extraordinary,
orbitals.
that the
Change any of
configuration
these
can
fundamental
contemplate
properties and
its
you
own
change the
existence.
freezing point.
That
but
has
you
never
can't
happened
change them.
before in
They're built
14
into the
billion
fabric
years
of
of
physics.
cosmic history.
So 0
as far
degree
as we
Celsius isn't a human
except
convention.
here, except
it's
now,
a physical
except
constant
in things
as
like
real
you
and
and me.
inevitable as
And
the
yes,
speed
the
of
pattern
light.
is temporary.
Water has
It will
no
end. The
choice
dance
but to
will
freeze
stop.
exactly
But the fact
there.
that it happened
So
at all, that
why does
atoms
water
could arrange
freeze? You came
themselves
here
into
wanting a
something
simple
that
answer.
feels joy
Maybe
and
you thought
wonder
I'd
and
give you a
grief and
sentence
love
or two.
that is not
Molecules slow
diminished
down,
by the
water
fact that
becomes
it's
ice.
temporary.
Done. But now you see
If
why that
anything,
was never going to satisfy
it's made
you.
more remarkable.
Water freezes because
I have no
molecules
patience
slow
for the
down.
idea that knowing
That's
the
true, but
science
it's the
takes the
beginning,
beauty
not
out of
the
a
end.
flower,
Water
or the
freezes
mystery
because
out of
when
life,
molecules
or
slow
the
down,
meaning out of death.
hydrogen bonds
It does
stop
the
breaking.
opposite.
The
When you
positive
understand that
hydrogen of
every
one
atom in your
molecule
body was
finally
cooked
gets to
in a
hold
star,
on to the negative
that your
oxygen of
consciousness
another
is a pattern
without
held
being
together
ripped
by
away by
electrochemical
thermal
signals
chaos.
in a
Water
lump of
freezes
matter that
because
was
those
once
hydrogen
scattered
bonds
across a
have
galaxy,
geometry.
and that
The
every
shape
bit
of the
of you
water
will go
molecule,
back to
that
the earth and the sky and the ocean
104.5
to
degrees
become
angle
part of
forced
other
by
things,
quantum
other
mechanics
patterns,
and
other
electron
dances.
repulsion
How
dictates
can
that
that
each
be
molecule
anything but
bonds to
magnificent?
exactly
We are
4
not
neighbors in a
separate from the
tetrahedral
universe.
arrangement.
We are
There's
the
no
universe,
other option.
temporarily
The structure is
organized,
inevitable.
briefly aware.
Water
And when the
freezes because that
organization ends, the
tetrahedral
components
lattice,
return
beautiful
to
and
the pool
rigid,
from which the
takes
next
up
pattern
more
will be drawn.
space than liquid
So
water.
is death the
Ice
end from the point of view of the
expands.
pattern?
Ice floats.
Yes.
And because
The
ice
dance
floats,
stops.
life
From the
exists
point of view
on
of
this
the
planet.
atoms, the energy,
Water
the
freezes
fundamental
because the
stuff of
electromagnetic
reality.
force, the
No,
same
it's
force
not
that
even a
stops your
pause,
hand
it's
from
just a
passing
change
through a
of
table.
partner.
The
I don't
same
know what
force
happens
that
to
makes
consciousness
magnets
when the
repel.
brain stops.
The same force
Nobody
holding
does.
every atom in
Physics
your body
doesn't
together
have a complete
expresses
theory of
itself
consciousness.
through hydrogen
And
bonds.
anyone who tells
exactly
you
the
otherwise
strength
is
needed
selling you
to
something.
lock molecules
What
into
physics
crystals
can tell
at
you
exactly
and tell you
0
with
degrees
absolute
Celsius.
certainty
Not
is
magic,
that
not
not a
mystery,
single atom
mathematics,
of your
structure,
body will be
geometry.
destroyed.
The
Not a
universe
single
following its own
joule of
rules
energy
with
will
perfect
vanish.
relentless consistency.
Everything you are in the
Every
physical
ice cube
sense
you've ever held,
will
every
continue in a
snowflake, every
different
frozen
form, in
lake,
a different pattern.
all of it emerges
but it will
inevitably
continue.
from the
And there's
properties
one more
of
thing.
hydrogen
Every
and oxygen
person
atom.
who has ever lived,
Properties that
every
were fixed
person
at the
who
beginning
has
of the
ever loved
universe.
you,
And here's
every
what should
person
truly
whose atoms
astonish
have
you.
passed
You can
through
understand
you
this.
and yours.
You can hold
through
an ice
them.
cube in your
They
hand
are all
and
woven
know
into the
actually
same
know
great
what's happening
fabric
at
of
the
matter
molecular
and
level.
energy that
That's
makes
not
up this
ordinary.
universe.
That's
The
extraordinary.
atoms in your
That's
right hand
physics,
may have once
not
been in the
comfort,
body of a
not
farmer
simplicity,
in ancient
truth.
Egypt. The
If this
oxygen you
changed
just
how you see
exhaled
something
may
as
end up in the
simple as
lungs of
ice,
someone 1,000
imagine what else
years
you're
from
missing.
now. We are
Right
all
now,
connected,
you're
not
surrounded by
sentiment,
phenomena
but by
you think
physics,
you understand,
by the
but
simple,
don't.
stubborn,
Light,
beautiful fact
gravity,
that atoms
the screen
endure.
you're reading this
So the
on,
next time someone
your own
asks
thoughts,
you what happens
all
when
of
you
it goes
die,
deeper than you
can
know.
tell them what physics
Subscribe
says.
to Feynman
The candle
physics
goes out
and hits
yes,
the bell.
But every
atom of
video
the
on
candle
this
is
channel
still
is
here.
built to do
The
exactly
flame is
what this
gone,
one
but the
did.
heat it produced
Break
is still
your
warming the
assumptions.
room. Warming
Tear
the
down
air,
the cartoon
dissipating out
explanations
into
you
the
learned in
world,
school,
joining the
and
immense
rebuild your
ocean of energy
understanding
that has
from
been
the ground
flowing
up.
through this universe since the
way
beginning of
physics
time.
actually
Nothing
works.
is lost. Nothing. The
Your
dance
subscription
changes. The music
keeps
plays
this
on.
channel alive.
Now I want to hear from you. Here's
It
a
tells
question
the
worth
algorithm
thinking
that this
about.
matters.
If
It
every
helps me
atom in
keep
your
making
body
these
gets
videos
replaced
instead
over
of
the course
dumbing
of a
things
few
down for
years, and you
clicks.
are really a
And it
pattern,
means
not a
more
thing,
people get to see
then
the
what
universe
exactly
the way
makes
it
you
actually
you?
is.
Write
Not
down your best
simplified,
answer.
not
I'd love to know
comfortable,
what
real.
you come up. Subscribe now. The next video might destroy everything you think you know. See you on the next one.